this is a very good venue for us. We've been an active participant for many years in supporting it, and we find the presentations to be very relevant and good, as well as the networking opportunities.
I think this is one of the great venues for having lots of professionals in the industry come together once a year, almost like a ritual, and showing the greatest and latest from everybody and talking to each other and understanding what's going on.
Conferences like this, I learn a lot. I don't travel that much. I don't go to all that many meetings, but Global Mill Satcom is one of the ones that's definitely worth going to.
I would like to ask you, what do you feel is the most important market or achievement in the military today for you guys?
Thank you, Claude. It's great to be here. We do about 40% of our revenues are attributed to global militaries worldwide, 30% being in the United States with our iDirect Government Technologies IGT subsidiary. So we are very proud of the work that we've done around the world with all of that. Probably the largest achievement that we've had to date is the U.S. Army's CSS SATCOM program, which is a very large logistics network. It is now the largest VSAT network for the U.S. Army, and that's been our project for 10 years now. We're glad to see it continue to go. As far as some of the areas that we're focused pretty heavily on, though, we're looking more at mobility and portability. From the portability side, we certainly have done a lot of good work with our global partners in being able to provide solutions for special forces and other areas of the military operations that involve needing to get broadband communications out of a man-pack style terminal. So we have products invested pretty heavily in products around that that are able to take our modem satellite router technology and put it inside of a very small rucksack style terminal. Another area that we're very, very focused on is mobility. If we look at a lot of the areas of growth we see with global militaries in the United States and special, it's very much about getting higher data rates out of the field. ISR applications, airborne ISR is one of our key things that we've invested heavily in, and we have several products now that we offer to global militaries. We have the E8000 AR and E8000 AE products that are actually airborne style products designed for the airborne environments with the certifications there. So we're actually able to bring a lot of data rate back from those type of platforms.
That's quite a broad scope of products and that you're making up for the government market. But in the current fiscal restraints and regarding the U.S. government in particular, how did iDirect get impacted by the recent sequestration as well as the shutdown?
Well, it's interesting. We certainly were impacted. We did not see any of the programs go away, and we still see great growth coming out of the government. However, with the sequestration and then the complete shutdown in Q3 of this year, it absolutely impacted the government's ability to process the orders to actually get the equipment shipped. So we definitely saw a backlog that was created by the slowdown in the government operations. But we've now seen that actually pick up pretty heavily, and a lot of the stuff that was put on hold at the end of Q3 has actually already been processed and shipped. So we think we're through the worst of it. You never know with these types of government types of bureaucracy, so we'll see.
What do you see as the greatest challenge in meeting the military's high bandwidth requirements going forward?
We think the greatest challenge in getting the higher data rates that they need to come out of the field, really in a couple of different areas, but mainly on the terminal side. What they're trying to do is to get higher and higher data rates. They're trying to pump more and more power EIRP out of these terminals, and the terminals have to get smaller, cheaper, and ultimately faster. So we think a lot of the challenge has been around the terminal side. Certainly switching over to high throughput type satellites and Ka band capacity has certainly helped the terminals get smaller, and they've also allowed us to be able to pump a lot more throughput through these types of terminals. So we think it's both a challenge on the terminal side as well as the high throughput satellites that are going to be provide this.
Speaking of HTS, your company is involved in the development of these ground segment technologies for those new satellites. Can you tell us how this fits in with the requirements of the military?
Absolutely. We think high throughput satellites are a key strategic direction for most governments around the world. In the United States, you've seen them invest in the WGS satellites around the world, and those are actually high throughput capacities on these satellites. We've also seen other programs like the Athena Fides program in France, where they have a new satellite that's going to have some military Ka spot beams on it. We're involved in that program as well. So we think it's very strategic for governments to have their own sovereign capacity to be able to provide the capacity where they need it for their current missions. But we also see probably a bigger aspect of it as trying to be providing interoperability and roaming to other types of commercial satellite capacity and being able to provide interoperability between different forces. So we're involved in all of that, and it's actually a key strategic goal for us to try and further the HTS growth through governments and be able to adapt and have commercial capacity to be able to augment that.
You just mentioned interoperability. How does iDirect address that need for interoperability between military and commercial systems?
That's a very good point. We are the ground segment provider for the Inmarsat I-5 satellites Global Express program. So we'll see coming next month and throughout next year the rollout of a complete global Ka as well as military Ka capacity. We see that as a very important augmentation of the governments, the different governments that are going to be using that. And so by having the ability for terminals to actually operate on both of those satellites, commercial as well as military, we think that's a key part of it, and we're developing the technology to connect the back office systems, management systems, and to make sure that not only can the terminals operate on those with the proper waveforms, they actually connect all the way back through the sovereign government's backbone, as well as allow them to manage the resources when they're on somebody else's capacity. So roaming is actually a very, very big part of our strategic future.
Other than HTS, what do you see as the most significant and important technological developments for the military markets in the coming years?
It's an interesting question. We see a number of different areas. Certainly the growth of HTS and the changes that are coming to the satellite side of that is a big part of the growth. On the ground segment side, I've already mentioned how terminals need to get smaller, faster, and ultimately use less power. So we see those are some of the biggest technology advances that will be coming out in the next several years. We're investing in a number of different terminal technologies. And the last area is the satellite themselves. We think the use of process payloads and certainly technologies like channelizers are going to be used more and more in space. The WGS program is certainly taking advantage of some of those today. And so we think a lot of the advancements are going to come from the space side.